I'm Tyler Fertel here, joined by NFL Network producer McEnroe Francis. McEnroe, thank you very, very much for joining me here.
Thanks for having me, Tyler.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to this interview. Obviously, with the NFL season starting next week, there's a lot of hype surrounding the season. And as we just talked about, you'll be actually covering the NFL kickoff on NFL Network to begin Rams Bills next week, which is awesome. I will definitely be tuning into that. And so I wanted to get started off here, just giving you the chance to talk a little bit about yourself. Tell the viewers kind of where you got to be at the NFL Network and a little bit about your story.
Sure. I went to school in Maryland at Towson University. They have a television program there. Didn't really have a set, at the time. I wasn't like, I'm going to be a producer for sure. I wanted to be on air. They kind of let you do everything in college as far as, and I feel like everybody should do that, like directing, editing, being on air, producing. All those skills all come together when you actually get into the workforce.
Mm-hmm.
I interned at a bunch of places in college, and then I worked in local news in Baltimore. That's where I'm from, and did news for about a year and a half. Ended up going to Philly for 2 years, almost three. I worked on a talk show there,
Mm-hmm.
and TV is very much of a small knit group of people across the country. The line producer for the talk show that I worked on actually quit the talk show, went to CNN in Atlanta, eventually worked her way to Los Angeles and got a job at the NFL Network.
Uh-huh.
I stayed in Philly, ended up getting laid off when everybody got laid off in 2010, and kind of freelance and stuff for a bit until I finally moved to LA in 2012. Yeah, 2012, and applied to an NFL Network probably 50 times. Never heard a peep. And then I saw my friend, who I used to work with in Philly. She was out here and hit her up like, hey, you want to grab a drink? And she said, you'll never believe where I got a job. NFL Network. I told her, like, hey, I've applied there 50 times, hadn't heard a word. She's like, apply there one more time. I'll get you an interview. And that was in 2015. I worked overnights there to start. I was a news producer overnight, would cover any sort of breaking news if there was like a late night injury or, knucklehead player gets arrested, like leaving the club or something, like all that kind of stuff I covered. Breaking in with reporters and stuff, doing anywhere from a 1 minute to 30 minutes if a Hall of Fame player died or something like that. All that kind of stuff we would break in for. I did that for 3 years on the overnights till 2 in the morning until they needed some people to work during the day, and I was like, Ray, I was the first one in line. Like, hey, like get me off of this night shift. They had a staff opening for full time. I applied for it. I got it. I started segment producing on shows, which you basically help whoever's putting the show together, tweak everything for the show. You're cutting sound, you're coming up with ideas, you're pitching, show ideas as far as like games we should be covering or something I might see on Twitter or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And then eventually became the main producer for NFL Now, which is our midday show. It's on at 10 a.m. Pacific. I produced that probably 3 to 4 days a week for the first year. Then I started doing game day highlights, which is kind of our Redzone version that's on NFL Network. And then this last season, I started doing producing Redzone, the actual Redzone with Scott Hansen. So I do that every Sunday. Yeah, I produce that from 10 a.m. to 1:30, and then I have the show on Monday. So I basically do that in the morning, and then I leave that show and put together my Monday show.
Wow.
So right now, my schedule for this year is pretty awesome. I produce Redzone on Sundays, NFL Now Monday and Tuesday, and then I'm the Thursday night football producer. So I do Thursday night football every week.
So you're working and producing around the clock. That's pretty cool.
It's pretty nonstop till February.
Wow. And so you talked about kind of how you always had your eye on NFL Network when you were producing in Philly and everything. Obviously, and the NFL is the most popular sport in the US. I don't think anyone can deny that. But why did you always have your eye on the NFL Network rather than maybe NBA TV, the MLS, MLB? Was it just always because you had a passion for football, or what was it?
Yeah, it's funny because I originally my dream job, I guess, pre graduating college was Fox Soccer Channel. I don't know, that doesn't exist anymore. It used to be on Fox. Then NBC bought the rights to the English Premier League. Now the English Premier League's all over the place. You know, what people are fighting over La Liga, and I'm a huge soccer fan too. So
Me too.
originally that was my dream job, was Fox Soccer Channel. Like if I can get to Fox Soccer Channel, which was also out here in LA, that was kind of my dream job. ESPN to me was always too many sports. Like I like hockey, but I don't know enough about hockey. I like baseball, but I don't know enough about baseball. Like I know a lot about football. I know a lot about soccer. Either one of those I felt very competent in producing or helping produce shows for. I know nothing about NASCAR, barely anything about golf. Like women's sports, don't really know a lot about WNBA or anything like that outside of, what's, trending on social media. I don't know a lot about, rugby or, just the ESPN to me felt like it was too stretched thin.
Uh-huh.
Whereas like the niche networks, like, I mean, NBA TV wouldn't, I would consider NBA TV, except it's in Atlanta. And like, I don't want to live in Atlanta. Like you have to kind of think of all that stuff when you're looking for TV jobs as to where these things are placed. I don't want to live in Bristol, Connecticut, so I wouldn't want to work for ESPN unless it was ESPN LA. Red Bull TV's out here. World Surf League is out here. I would love to work for either one of those companies if I didn't work at NFL. I have a buddy that works for Red Bull TV. He does the snowboarding events for them. He does one of the bike events for them. World Surf League. I mean, who wouldn't want to go to Tahiti and Portugal? And, that would be a dream job for anybody just based on the travel schedule. But I think I was more drawn to the NFL because it was one sport. It's easier to focus and kind of put all your time into one thing.
And also, who wouldn't want to live in California? I mean,
exactly.
Like you said, yeah.
I'm coming up on my 10-year mark, and I love California.
It's the best. You said you were a soccer fan. I'm a soccer fan too. Just wondering what's your team?
I'm an Arsenal fan since France '98. Dennis Bergkamp was on that team. That's when Thierry Henry, and that's when France won. France won hosting the World Cup in France. They had Zidane on the team, and there was so many French players on that French team with Thierry Henry, Robert Perez, Patrick Vieira, and most of them were on Arsenal.
Yeah.
So I just like, hey, all these guys are on the Arsenal team, and then I've just been watching them since then. They've been trashed the last 6 years.
If you can see, I'm a Manchester United fan, so
we play Sunday. Arsenal, Man U.
You guys are. I mean, aren't you? You guys are 4-0 right now, right?
Yeah, 4-0 with comeback against Fulham on Saturday.
Yeah, that was crazy. That was a crazy game, but I'm looking forward to that Sunday game.
Yes,
but we had a tough start to the year, but I like the direction that Man U's going.
Hey, Manchester United is like one of the most storied franchise on planet Earth. So I don't feel sorry for you having a bad start to this season.
I mean, it's crazy that one of the best players of all time, Ronaldo. I mean, no one knows what's happening with him. He's not even playing. So that's a story that's just going to continue on until he actually starts playing.
I'm a massive Ronaldo fan. Massive Ronaldo fan.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to dislike him, I would say.
Yeah.
And kind of getting back into the NFL side of things, you said you're a line producer, obviously, which means that you control the daily operations of your shows. You said there's a lot of planning that goes into it, obviously, because after you finish the morning segment of NFL Redzone, you immediately go into planning the NFL Now episode the next day. So but obviously it takes a while, but what actually goes into that process of planning just one singular show like Total Access, Inside Training Camp, NFL Now, whatever it is, and how long hours, minutes, whatever it is, how long do they really take to prepare?
So just using Sunday into Monday as an example. So the good thing about having the back-to-back shifts, I mean, I'm working probably a 14-hour day total with going in at 8, working red zone till 1:30, and then I usually drive home, depending on if there's a game at SoFi. Like I might be stuck there for an extra hour or two if there's traffic. But then I come home, I put the afternoon games on, and then I watch Sunday Night Football. And I do all that kind of while I'm putting my show together. Most Mondays, I will start my show with Sunday Night Football. So it just depends if the game is a complete blowout or it's so boring that, there was some other game that, say Raiders Chargers becomes a barn burner and it's, 45-43 is the final and they win it off a kick and like that in my head might be my lead until something else hits it out of the way. Mm-hmm. So you basically plan out your show based on what you think is the best and then what you think is the time-wise, chronologically, what's the last thing that has happened. So normally on a Monday, the last thing that has happened is Sunday Night Football. Mm-hmm. So like if I look at, week one, just looking at the slate for week one, that Chargers Raiders game, obviously big, Chiefs Cardinals, obviously big. I won't be doing anything Bills Rams on Monday necessarily because to me that's old. It would have happened on Thursday. Say Steelers Bengals, say Trubisky struggles in the first quarter and they pull him and Pickett goes in. Now that game becomes very, very important, because now there's a QB change in week one. Tomlin would never do that, but I'm just using it as an example. But it makes it easy, super easy for week one because it's Cowboys, which have one of the biggest fan bases in the NFL against Brady on Sunday night. I could mentally build my Monday show just off the top of my head right now. Like my my first block of the show is Sunday Night Football. I'm talking Bucks. I'm talking Cowboys. And then I usually will do some sort of injury update with like our insiders, any big injuries from week one. B block most likely would be Raiders Chiefs. And then just looking at the schedule, it would be at that point, probably either Chiefs, Cardinals, Packers, Vikings, or Steelers, Bengals, just depending on the outcome of the game. So I'll start putting in like games, post-game sound. Sometimes you'll get great post-game sound, so then that game becomes a little more important. Mm-hmm. Outside of a regular Monday show, if I'm putting together Inside Training Camp or Total Access or a Now NFL Now, not on a Monday, like a Tuesday Now or a Wednesday Now, we base all that on storylines that are happening. So if there's an injury and there's a coach that speaks, the schedule during the season is very like regimented. QBs and coaches talk on Wednesdays. Monday night coaches talk on Tuesdays. Thursday night coaches talk on Wednesdays. We know all that for the whole season. Mm-hmm. So you just follow the storylines for what's important. And then if you can get, live sound from a coach giving you an update on a player, that's kind of how I usually build out my show, is based on timing and then what I think is the most important heading into the week.
Uh-huh. And for example, like on that Monday show, obviously, probably like you said, the Cowboys-Bucks game will be, if not the biggest headline, one of the biggest headlines going into Monday morning and Monday. If, for example, a big storyline like Zeke fumbles on the first drive, Tony Pollard takes over the lead back role for the rest of the game, do you kind of plan that question for your anchor to ask like the analysts and people, or do you just kind of give them freedom over like talk anything about the game and just kind of hit these big topics, or do you give them like specific questions to pose?
So normally we will have, like at that game, we'll have a reporter that was there. And then post game sound, there's in a post game press conference, there's reporters from all in Tampa. There's all the Dallas reporters, and then there's national reporters because it'll be a national game and it's Brady, Cowboys. They're going to ask these questions there. Like, they're going to ask these questions in the post-game presser. Like, Mike McCarthy, Zeke struggled early. Tony Pollard had, 30 carries. You only gave Zeke 10. Is this something that's going to be moving forward? And Mike McCarthy is going to have to answer that. He might say, like, we'll have to look at the tape, blah, blah, blah. But then it becomes an easy jump-off point if we usually have a pre-show meeting where Andrew Siciliano, who's the host on Mondays, he also does Redzone on DirecTV. We'll have a meeting with me, him, and the other producers on the show, the PAs, anybody working on cutting tapes and stuff. We'll all have like a chat, and we'll say like, this was important. This was important. This was important. And someone might say like, oh yeah, somebody asked McCarthy about the running back situation. Maybe we use that sound. So you get your little jump off points from what the game gives you. And then we will either have an analyst respond to that, I think Brian Baldinger's on our Monday show. Sometimes we'll have like Willie McGinnis or, somebody from Total Access will also do our show. And we'll throw that kind of question out to them. So different shows have different like responsibilities in a way, where NFL Now is like the news show. We're trying to give you the news. So like somebody was injured, we're telling you why. Somebody's been demoted to the second thing, we're telling you that happened. Whereas like Total Access is more of an analyst show. So they're like analyzing the why. Like, this is why Zeke didn't work, because they kept running it to the same side. And, like Levante David had that play scoped out from the beginning. Like, they'll give you the breakdown of the why, the analysts, whereas the reporters are like telling you the facts. If that makes sense.
Yeah. With like a news show like this as well, like, are you always preparing for potential like breaking news thing in like the middle of like if you're talking about Cowboys Bucks and all of a sudden Odell Beckham Jr. signs with the Cowboys because they're not strong wide receiver? Do you immediately go into that, or do you plan
100%
beforehand?
Yeah, as soon as that breaks, I can talk to the anchor in their ear, and I'll say, breaking news, OBJ signing with blah, blah, blah. Let's use a thing from social. Like if one of our insiders posted something, I'll say like, let's use a tweet, and then let's bring in the insiders. Tell us what the deal is. Tell us how long the deal is, what they had to, what the compensation is. And then also while they're talking, I'll say like, hey, Brian Baldinger, do you want to chime in on the Odell Beckham trade? And they'll say like, either like, they'll be off camera or something, but they'll be like, sure, yeah, I want to talk. So then out of that, we'll come out to, 3 people on camera, and the host will say like, hey, what do you think about this Odell Beckham trade? How does this change the Cowboys? Blah, blah, blah. Is this what they needed to get over the hump? Yada, yada. They'll chat that for however much time. And now in my head, I need to steal time from somewhere else to get back on time, because the commercial breaks and all that. So you have to fit that puzzle. You're re-according your own show to get back on time.
And something I've always thought is really cool is how quickly these channels like ESPN, NFL Network get these graphics up, whether it's a tweet, whether it's just like the breaking news thing at the bottom. It's just like, it just makes you realize how fast everything moves, especially when there's breaking news, which I've always thought was interesting.
Yeah, and Twitter changed the game. Twitter now is like, once it breaks on Twitter, it's it's everywhere. Everybody's heard it at that point.
And now we talked about this before, but I want to move more into NFL Redzone. And obviously you work with Scott Hanson, whose signature line is 7 hours of commercial-free football when referring to NFL Redzone. So obviously, like Scott Hanson says, there's no commercials there. You don't get breaks. He's on air continuously while all these games are happening. So what are some of the challenges that come along with having basically no stoppages throughout this whole show?
I mean, the hardest part there is making sure you have somewhere to go. So like, I am in the control room staring at usually 9 games at the same time, sometimes 8, depending on how many games are in the early window. And I'm constantly looking. There's other people also looking, but I'm looking at all the games. I'm seeing like who's getting close to the red zone. If I see a big play, I'll say like, whoa, 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 what just happened in the Vikings game? Or, and there's people in the tape room who are rewinding tapes and queuing stuff up for me, and they're telling me in my ear like, hey, that was Justin Jefferson, 35-yard touchdown, it's ready whenever you want it. Or if I see like the Chargers, like Justin Herbert just threw a bomb to Keenan Allen, they're in the red zone, so I'll tell Scott Hansen like, hey, Chargers in the red zone, Bills in the red zone, whatever, 2-box Bills Chargers, and then we'll go to that. The only problem is if I go to Chargers full and say on that Keenan Allen catch, somebody was hurt, and I don't notice it. If somebody's like, oh, no, there's an injury. So then in my head, I need somewhere to go. So I already need to be on what's happening next, because they'll go to commercial break and we can't. If the broadcast goes to commercial, we're not showing their commercial. We got to go somewhere else. So, the good thing is we have that score panel that shows all the scores. If I'm still figuring out where to go, they can always just put the scores up, and then I'll just tell Scott scores in his ear. He'll read through some of the scores till I have somewhere to go. So it's all about like you're kind of working 2 steps ahead of yourself, so you always have somewhere to go, because you can tell by the music sometimes that they're going to commercial break. You can tell by a graphic that they put up, like, they're about to go to commercial break. And you just pick up on that, like, the more you do it. And your bailout is always a score bail, which is nice to have that. But, yeah, you're always trying to be 2 steps ahead of yourself.
And, that set for NFL Redzone, sometimes I'll watch Scott Hansen. Other times I'll watch Andrew Siciliano, whichever, whether it's DirecTV or Spectrum or whatever. But, I mean, those sets they're just awesome, because you have, like, scores in one corner, and then you have like all the games in the other. You have like the touch screen. It just seems very, very like cool.
Yeah, the DirecTV set is like a physical set where you can touch everything. You can manipulate stuff. The Red Zone, the NFL Network Red Zone set is on a green screen.
Oh my, really?
Yeah, it's a fake set. It's just Scott there with a Red Zone desk, and then he stands the entire time. He stands for 7 hours with both his researchers standing next to him. And they just they feed him stats. They tell him, like, that was a 30-yard play to, Tyreek Hill. They tell him all those stats, because I won't be able to see those in real time. I'm just watching the games.
Which, in your opinion, is it harder to do all like the real life stuff, like with DirecTV, or do you think like the green screen part is harder? I mean, they're just very different.
Yeah, they're very different. I mean, I think Scott could do both. I think Andrew could do both. I think neither one of them, like, Scott wants to just do his hello off the top, and he wants to get right to football. Like, he doesn't want to ever be on camera. He wants the football he wants it to be football, football, football. And we sometimes will come on camera if we need, if one of the games ends early and we have nowhere else to go, he'll come on camera. He'll, rehash some stuff that happened earlier. We'll get in some cool social stuff that happened. And then like push to the afternoon games. But he tries not to be on camera. He wants the football to be on.
And obviously, Scott Hansen's very good at his job. Andrew Siciliano is very good at his job. All the analysts and reporters on NFL Network are all very good at their jobs. So what do you look for when hiring, whether it's you, whether it's kind of more the administration of NFL Network, whatever it is? I'm guessing you have some sort of say in that. What do you look for in an anchor, an analyst, a reporter, really whatever it is for your shows?
I mean, you basically want them to have relationships with teams, especially if they're in a certain market. A lot of our reporters like live and work out of their market. So like we have a Dallas Cowboys reporter, we have a Dolphins reporter, we have a Patriots reporter. But then our Patriots reporter can also do, Giants and Bills. But it just depends if he has a relationship with Sean McDermott, or, the more that they're in these facilities, the more of a relationship they have with the players and the coaches. And then the easier it is for them to get access, for them to get questions answered. So, I mean, that's kind of the main thing as far as reporters go. You want them to have a relationship with the team, with the players, with the coaches, and they'll get better access if they do. They'll let them interview the players after the games. It's easier to get an interview. It's easier for them to be in the locker room post game. It was hard during the pandemic because we lost locker room access because of COVID. So a lot of our new reporters, they couldn't build up these relationships with these players, especially rookies and stuff, because there was no access, So that was something we struggled with for sure. Like getting the rookies on, building relationship with the rookies during that 2020 season. Even 2021 was like a little less strict. The access was still restricted, but it wasn't like 2020. There was no access. Now we're back to full locker room access. So our reporters can get in there. They can talk to the players. I produce the Pro Bowl every year too. So you see when you have a good reporter, they'll only give me one reporter, sometimes two. The better reporter you have, the more players know them, because they know them from covering them all season long.
Yeah.
So it's like you want that kind of access. You want that sort of confidence when they can just go up to any player and the player's like, oh, hey, how's it going? Like, I haven't seen you in a while. How's your family? Like once you see that kind of relationship building with a player and a reporter, I think that's what you want is that, because you get better access for news and anything football related.
Mm-hmm. And you basically covered one of my questions there. It's very clear that relationships and connections to whether it's teams, players, any organizations, whatever it is very key to having a successful career in like the sports television industry. Really, as a reporter, or even as an analyst or anchor, you get better access to information, and everything like that. So I think that is very, very interesting insight there. And something else I want to kind of touch on here is you cover NFL Redzone, but another channel that you guys have on in that little group of channels is the NFL Fantasy Zone channel. That is right next to it. And it's also part of the Sunday Ticket package. And I know the NFL Network also has a show called NFL Fantasy Live. I don't know if you have ever touched with that or anything. I'm sure you're aware of it, obviously. But not only with those shows, but really probably with NFL Now, Total Access, even Inside Training Camp, whatever it is, fantasy football is definitely a part of those shows and planning those shows and talking about all the stuff happening in the league, because it is part of what makes the NFL so popular. So how has like the popular fantasy football affected the way you produce your shows?
Well, I would say fantasy football, I think since fantasy football has become popular, the NFL has become more popular. Like the NFL has always been popular. It's always been big. It got bigger when fantasy came around because people who didn't have a team, like didn't have a specific player that they liked. Now you're following all these teams that you didn't know about. Like maybe you're only a Chargers fan and you only watched the Chargers game, but now you're on your fantasy football team. You have all these players that are on different teams, and now you're suddenly like, oh yeah, I kind of like I like the Vikings. Like they're my number 2 team, or I like so and so. Like they're my number 2 team, or whatever. Like number 2 teams exist now because of fantasy and fantasy drafts, and people spend a lot of time on fantasy. Money is spent on fantasy. And I think that's kind of the main driver for any business is money. So I think the fact that fantasy has blown up the way it has made money for the NFL. It's made money for, FanDuel and DraftKings and all these things are like, those are all birthed from fantasy football. Betting was its own thing before fantasy football, and now you can combine the two, which I'm sure is anything you can monetize is a big deal for any business, and the fact that fantasy football is easy to monetize and easy to get people on board, makes it, like a super valuable franchise for us.
Uh-huh. And I think fantasy football is really what makes the Sunday ticket package overall just so valuable to so many people. I mean, obviously, NFL Redzone is the most popular channel because you get to see when teams in the red zone, which is also very appealing to fantasy football players who want to see their players score. And then also there's the NFL Fantasy Zone, the Fantasy Zone channel, but also you have access to watch all of the games, whether you have like a big player who probably like. I mean, there are a lot of like the big players, for example, Christian McCaffrey, whose team is almost never nationally televised because, I mean, the Panthers aren't good. So
Yeah.
I think that's what makes Sunday Ticket so popular. And adding to that, I think that the reason why there's so much competition for literally for a channel or a streaming service to produce or like broadcast any individual game is because of fantasy football as well, because there are more people that want to watch any given game, not just the national televised ones. So I'm just wondering that obviously streaming services are becoming more involved in NFL broadcasts, and plenty of platforms and channels are competing for the rights to show literally, like I talked about, each and every NFL game, no matter what teams are playing. So, for example, the NFL Network has shown Thursday Night Football, as I'm guessing you're aware, since the start of 2006, but beginning this season, Amazon Prime Video will be taking that role over. So I was just wondering what your what your opinion is on this, on the competition that is consistently happening amongst these streaming services and platforms, and that if you think there will ever be any simplicity to where games are shown, and whether it's one or two or only three channels showing them.
Mailman just got here. I think Amazon Prime is a good example as to like, Thursday Night Football was only on the NFL Network. We built it up from nothing. It was an added day. We already had Monday Night Football. We already had Sunday Night Football. And it was a chance for the NFL. They created Thursday Night Football into its own thing. And just like fantasy football, just like anything, it became monetized as a franchise. Thursday Night Football, TNF, it became its own entity. And they were like, who wants it? Sells it to Amazon. Basically, they renegotiate those deals every collective bargaining agreement or TV. When the deals expire, they renegotiate with the owners. And the major networks are the ones that fight over the NFL. So, NBC gets Sunday night, ESPN gets Monday night, Fox gets mainly NFC games, CBS gets mainly AFC games. And then they work out between Thanksgiving, between the triple headers now on Saturdays after college football is done. They work out the packages of how many games, who gets what. Right now, NFL Network, the only games we're getting is we have a couple triple exclusives on Saturday. I think we have one triple exclusive, and then we have the international games. So I think we have 7 exclusive games on our network, which is the least amount of games that we've had, just exclusive to us. We've had some like dual platform stuff. I'm hoping Amazon does great. If they'll probably have some growing pains in the first year. I don't think there'll ever be a one network gets all the games, just because, it's a supply and demand thing, and the NFL can put a price on Monday night. They can put a price on Sunday night. They can put a price now on Thursday night. The TNF for Amazon, it's not a forever deal. At some point, it goes back out to the bidders, and somebody's going to want to buy it again, Whoever didn't get it the first time, maybe Hulu wants it next time. Maybe Apple TV wants it next time. So at some point, I think it'll keep being like this. It may switch, who knows if ESPN will ever give up Monday night. Maybe they'll say, I want to give up Monday night for Sunday night, or I want to give up, maybe Amazon Prime will be like, we actually want Monday night, so we're going to outbid ESPN for Monday night. I mean, that could happen. Who knows? But I don't think it'll ever go where ESPN gets it all or CBS gets it all or NBC gets it all. I think it'll always be on multiple networks.
Uh-huh. And do you think that there will ever be a point where kind of like you said, I mean, right now ESPN, NBC, CBS, whatever it is, Fox control these major games during the weekend and Monday night. But do you think there will ever be a time where maybe the streaming services take over the role of showing the games?
Yeah, I think the streaming services, at some point they're going to be bidders too. Like Amazon just has the capital right now to be that high buyer. At some point, and if Fox buys Hulu, or like if one of the big networks ends up buying, ESPN owns Disney Plus. Who's to say that they could cross platform it themselves and say that Monday Night Football is now on ESPN and Disney Plus? Like, it's their choice. They own both.
Uh-huh.
So I could see something like that happening for sure, where, a company that owns their own streaming, NBC owns Peacock, they could say like, hey, Sunday Night Football is on NBC and on Peacock. I wouldn't see that. That could totally happen.
Uh-huh. And like you said, NFL Network has their fewest games that they've ever had this year, exclusively. Do you think that NFL Network is kind of more shifting into the role of being the only channel that only produces NFL news content and kind of leaving the games up to all these other major channels? Or do you think that they'll always be in the market of producing those games as well?
I think they always want to be doing games if they can, even if it's 7, even if it's 5, whatever the number is. The international games are going to get bigger and bigger. This year, we're in Germany for the first time. Last year, Mexico got canceled because the field was screwed up. This year, we're back in Mexico. There's 3 games in England. I mean, sky's the limit for international games at this point. I wouldn't be surprised if there's, 4 in England next year, Mexico, 2 in Germany. I wouldn't be surprised if there's the soccer stadiums in Europe are massive. Like, there's no reason they couldn't do a game at the Bernabeu or some, like they could do a game in any Real Madrid stadium at Barca, like any of those stadiums. They have the capacity for it. They already have the infrastructure as far as like taking a train to the game, which most of the American cities don't even have. I think we would probably try to keep the international games at the network. I don't know for sure. It's above my pay grade, but I think the live game business is where you want to be. And you want to hold on to that as long as you can. I think once we're out of the live business game, I might have to get a job somewhere else, because I don't know what the timeline is for the NFL Network if we're out of the live game completely.
Uh-huh. And obviously, I mean, when a team like the Chargers, obviously we don't have an international game this year, but I'll wake up to watch some of my fantasy football players play. If the Chargers play next year,
Sure.
I'll wake up. So that's that. I mean, these international games are definitely still popular despite the time change. As someone that knows the NFL, I think you said that you've been working for NFL Network, what, 10 years now? Is that what you said?
Yes, this is my 7th year there. 10th year in California.
Ah,
7th season at NFL.
uh-huh. So 7 years in the NFL. You've definitely NFL Network has had international games for a pretty good amount of time, probably since it started. So you know quite a bit about the international football game there. Do you think that the NFL could potentially expand as part of like the National Football League, like get teams in Europe? Or do you think that it is more likely that they would create their own league, like developmental league in Europe, where it's probably not on the same level because football is like the biggest sport in America, but not in Europe? Do you think that they would create a second league in Europe to just play there?
I at one point I thought that Jacksonville, because Shad Khan has all these connections with Tottenham, and he could move. He's got the money. Obviously, he could move the Jags there if he wanted to. I think it just becomes logistically wise, already when they put together the schedule, they're thinking about, teams traveling east and west and traveling for the international game. Logistically, I don't know how it would work if there was a couple teams in Europe that, say you're the Chargers and now you got to fly to Europe. Like that's a 12-hour difference. When do you go to Europe? Do you get a bye week the week before or the bye week after? Like, how do you recover from the jet lag? How early do you get there? Do you have a place of practice there? Are there, NFL? Everything has to be like NFL approved. Like the field has to be NFL approved. The facilities have to be NFL approved. So it's like they would have to go through all that infrastructure of making sure that, the teams can go there and practice. The teams can go live from a press conference. Like none of that stuff ends just because they're traveling. So, I mean, I'd be very curious to see if that ever happened, if they expanded, if they brought in a couple European franchises. I think it would be successful in the small number. I know that the international games, especially in Europe, are very, very popular. Like the tickets are expensive. They're sold out. People show up in every sort. It doesn't matter who's actually playing. You'll see every jersey there from every team, not just the two that are playing. So, I mean, it would be interesting to see if it expanded for sure.
And I mean, the international games, at least last year, were mostly not the top teams just because they want to keep those, I'm guessing, nationally. Do you think that as the international game with football starts to get bigger and there are more fans, there are more ticket sales or whatever it is, do you think they'll start bringing the bigger teams over, like the Cowboys, like the Chiefs, like the Buccaneers? Do you think that's going to happen more in the short term or the long term? Like, because obviously, like last year, I remember one of the big games, and the only reason why I know is because I had Kyle Pitts on my fantasy team, and the only team he scored, or the only touchdown he scored last year, was in London against the Jaguars. So, like for example, like that.
I mean, the Bucs are going there this year, so that's good.
Are. Okay, I didn't know.
Bucs Seahawks is one of the games.
Okay.
So the international, I've never seen Brady play, and everybody in Europe gets to see him play before me. I was supposed to go Ravens. I'm from Baltimore, so I'm a Ravens fan. Ravens Bucks in Tampa on Thursday Night Football. So I'll be working, so I won't be able to be there for the game. But that would have been the game that I would have chose to go to, was see Brady play before he retires. But I think it'll expand. They're going to force the better teams to go out there. They're going to force the Cowboys, the Chiefs, the Packers, Patriots, all those teams will be going out there, especially now after Brady went there, no one has an excuse, the GOAT went, everybody's got to go.
And kind of to conclude our interview here, I want to pose this last question that I've asked a lot of my interviewees, just because I think it's a very valuable one for really anyone to hear. What would be your advice to someone interested in the sports television industry?
Well, I would say intern where you can, for sure. Make sure that you're doing the small, meaningless stuff as good as you possibly can, as good as you're doing the big projects that you get. If you can focus on one sport, maybe it's easier. I have some friends, some former PAs from NFL Network that now do work for the Dodgers, work for the Lakers. Sometimes it's easier to focus that way. I think also, if you have a passion for a certain sport, I would lean towards that sport more than, covering everything if possible. And just, you got to realize that it's a small group. Sports TV, TV in general is, however many people, and then you take regular TV, and you whittle it down to just sports TV, it's much, much smaller. So it's you just have to think about that, TV as a whole is already small. And then once you get to sports, it's so niche. If you can get your foot in the door there, for sure. And I would say figure out what you like, figure out what sport you like, figure out where you want to live. If you want to cover. And the other thing, the very real thing about the NFL and any TV job, any sports job, you're giving up a lot. You're giving up Thanksgiving with your family. You're giving up Christmas. There's games on Christmas this year. I'm going to be in Pittsburgh for the Immaculate Reception game. So, like, I don't get to hang out with my family on Christmas. You got to that's part of it, Like, it's not all the sports part of it's great. Covering football and they pay me to do it, I'll take their money all day. But the other reality side of it is, like, you're giving up weekends. You're giving up Sundays. You're giving up, you're giving up holidays a lot of the time. Like I love to snowboard. I love to go to Mammoth. Like, I can't go to Mammoth until February, pretty much. If there's a 5-foot dump, I can't drive up there until February. I might be able to go if there's not a Thursday night game 1 week or something. I have Friday, Saturday off. I can mob it up there, ride for 2 days, come back for Redzone. But, like, I got to be there at 8 a.m. for Redzone on Sunday. So it's just that kind of stuff. Like, it's great working in sports. It's such a, it's way better than news, like crime and slime and fires. And, like, sports is easy. It's fun. It changes every day. You're doing something that you'll hopefully like without TV involved. And you're getting paid for it, which that's great. It's just very demanding as far as your time. So use your time off as much as you can. And, hopefully you make some good friends at work because they become your family eventually because you see them more than anybody else.
Well, McEnroe, I really, really appreciate you coming onto the podcast. I'll be looking out for NFL Now, Total Access, the kickoff show next week. And also whenever you go to the scores on NFL Redzone, I'll just keep that in mind. That's kind of like an outlet, when there's nothing else to go. But
Mac had nowhere to go. He needed to score there.
I like getting that kind of inside look into the life of NFL Redzone. It's because it's basically my life on Sundays. I mean, it's basically a lot of people's lives on Sundays. So once again, I appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah. Let's keep in touch, Tyler.
We will for sure. Good luck or have fun this season. And we'll see where the Chargers and Ravens meet potentially in the playoffs this year. Two teams.
That'd be great.
Yeah. Have a good one.
Yeah. Take care.